I bought this Chinese knockoff of a Rough Crafts air cleaner for my Sportster. And if you're wondering how come I put Chinese junk on my bike, well, then I'll say I like the price, I like the look of it, and I like the size. This thing only cost about 45 bucks as compared to a couple $100 for a American made air cleaner. And I think it looks good. And half the fun of using Chinese junk like this is to figure out how to use American ingenuity and know-how to make it actually work right. The first thing I noticed when I got it out of the box was there are no instructions. So I'll be putting this video together to show you how to get the thing assembled and on your bike. And then the second thing I noticed was this cover is not threaded deep enough for the stud that holds it to the back plate. I went ahead and screwed it in as far as it would go, and there was still too much space between the cover and the back plate. The air filter was loose. There was a little bit of play in it, and if you can wiggle it around, then it's going to suck air, and these rubber gaskets are doing no good, and your air filter will be pointless. So I needed to shorten this down so that it would put enough tension on the gaskets of the air filter so that it would only suck air through the filter element. So the first thing I had to do was cut this threaded end down because I'm no good at tapping and threading stuff. I didn't want to even attempt to thread this deeper. It's drilled out deep enough, but the threads don't go deep enough. So simple solution, I got my cutoff wheel and I cut probably about, I'd say about 1/8 of an inch off of this end here. So now this is shorter, which means less distance between the cover and the plate, tighter fit on the air filter. The other thing I noticed was you've got these channels in here in this back plate that are supposed to channel the oil that comes through your breather bolts back to your carb. And that was another reason that I liked this thing, was you didn't have to worry about hoses and all this other crap to prevent the oil blowback on the side of your Sportster. It would channel it right here through the plate, right into the carb, and hopefully the air filter doesn't get saturated like it does on the stock one. But one thing I noticed is you got slick metal to slick metal on this little piece here that's supposed to go in and complete your channel for your oil. To me, that didn't seem very tight. I'm sure oil will find a way, especially when it's hot, to creep out of there. So another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some gasket, liquid gasket, and I'm going to put it in here right on the edge. Not a whole lot because I don't want to block it, but just enough so that the mating surfaces of this backing plate and this little channel here will have some type of gasket sealing the oil in there, keeping it going right to the carb instead of running all down the side of the unit and down the side of my bike. I'm going to use some Permatex Ultra Black Advanced Formula Maximum Oil Resistance Gasket Maker. They make some other RTV silicone stuff, but that's mostly used for parts that are around water and things like that. I want to use this stuff because oil does have a tendency to break down rubber. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a tiny bit and I'm going to run it along the edges of these pieces here before I put them down into this back plate. Now I'm just going to snap this thing right down in there. The directions say to let this stuff dry for about an hour before you torque it down. So I'm just going to put it in there kind of finger tight, and then I'll come back when I'm mounting it on the bike and snug it down with the bolts. And if you're wondering, I have already rejetted my carburetor and changed my exhaust out and put in a K&N high flow air filter that fits inside the stock air cleaner. I did that a long time ago before I even upgraded my cylinders and pistons. So hopefully with this new air cleaner I don't have to do too much tuning. This is a carbureted bike, so if I do, it'll be as simple as turning a few screws. I won't need a computer or something like that to help me get the job done. Go ahead and take all this apart. And if you're wondering about the lighting conditions, why it's always dark when I'm doing most of my work, it's because I work at night. And on my days off, I keep the same hours. So I don't have the luxury of working in the sunlight. Now that that air filter's off, you can see all the oil just sitting in the bottom of this air cleaner coming out of those breather bolts. Hopefully this new air cleaner will eliminate that problem. Alright, I'm going to use a 9/16 deep socket to get those stock breather bolts out of my heads. Okay, they give you 4 washers to go with these breather bolts, but as you can see here, this thick part here, that's too fat for the washer to even go through, so you can't get one up to the head of this bolt. So the way it's going to have to go is bolt straight through the backing plate, then your spacer, and then a washer, and then into your head. As you can see, the gasket between my air cleaner and my carburetor is pretty much shot, so I'm just going to make a new one using a cereal box and some of that gasket material that I've already used. Okay, I figured out why they give you 2 washers per side. It's because this spacer isn't big enough to put enough pressure on the back plate to keep the head of this breather bolt seated against the face of the plate without both washers on each side. So the way that you do it is both washers, then the spacer, then the backing plate with the breather bolt going through, and use the little Allen head screws to go into your carburetor. Got a nice tight fit with my cardboard gasket there, and have the other side done just the same. 2 washers, spacer, backing plate, breather bolt. Now all that's left is to put the air filter on with the cover, using that stud in that center hole. Alright, I think it looks pretty good. Probably look even better when I take it to the wash and get all this old, caked up, nasty oil washed off that came from that old air cleaner. So let me pull it around here. Light won't be as good, but I'm going to pull it around and start it up and see how it runs.